What's happening, guys? Charles Salisbury here. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Today we're going to be chatting about hair tongs, hair curlers, and hopefully give you a bit of guidance over your next purchase. The reason for this video came about quite recently. I was looking to update some of my kit, a couple of my tongs are broken, and I was looking to buy new ones. Now I know which ones I like, and I tend to get the same tongs because I know they work, I know they last me a long time, and I know what looks I can get out of them. But just out of interest, I was looking around the market, seeing what's happening, seeing what things are about, seeing what new developments had happened, and I was absolutely astounded by the variation and different types, promising different looks, and I thought, God, this must be super confusing if you didn't know what you were after. So now I wanted to just set a few things straight and give you hopefully a bit of guidance in this otherwise confusing world. For those of you who don't really use curling tongs or heated curlers, they are basically, simplistically, a hot barrel that gets to varying degrees of temperature that you put your hair around and it gives you a nice curl. Now the benefit of these over a brush is because they're hotter, they can more of a defined curl. They're also much easier and quicker to use than getting a whole brush and drying your hair with the brush. It'll give you a different look. Personally in the salon, I use the brush a lot. If I was doing editorial, I'll use tongs a lot, just because I need the heat to be in there to get it to stay where I want it to be. And it just makes the whole process a lot quicker. It's a lot quicker to, rather than shampooing, conditioning, wetting the hair down, then drying it. If I just spray a little bit of heat protectant in it and something to give it a bit of hold, rough dry that in and then tong it, speeds up the whole process, which is what you need on shoots and editorials because time is a factor. You're renting the studio, you're all paying for the time, you need to be quick. So tongs are invaluable in that respect. So before we chat about what size you should be using or what temperature you should be using, I wanted to go through a couple of different styles and which one's best for which person. So first of all, I want to talk about the standard one. These are the spring-loaded ones, so they have a spring beneath the glove. So if you bend it open, it'll snap back. This glove is really thin metal, so it will still get hot, so it does give you quite a good even shine throughout it. These are probably the easiest for a consumer to use. So if you're doing your own hair and you're not a professional, or even if you're doing your own hair and you are a professional, these are probably the easiest to use. The reason why is because they have the glove on them. I'll just show you on this very end bit. You can have your hand well away from the barrel and still curl that end, which means you don't burn your fingers, which means it can be away from your face and you can look at it. The second type that I see a lot, and I see various forms of shapes of this, is the wand. Now people love it or hate it. I personally do not like the wand. I think unlike having a glove, you have to get your fingers so close to the actual barrel that you will end up burning yourself. I burn myself continuously using these things. My hands are like asbestos, I can usually deal with the heat. But with the wand, I always find just to get that, I either leave a little bit splayed like that and it doesn't curl properly, or I end up having to hold it so close that I burn my fingers. I just don't think it's very pleasant. Yes, you can get gloves and you can get X, Y, and Z, and if it works for you, that's great. But for me, I find the gloves don't have the same dexterity that I have with my bare hands. I also don't find them as versatile. You can only hold it as tight as you can hold it. With the glove, you can hold the hair flat. So it has a lot more pressure on the hair, which means you can get a lot more of a smoother curl than you can with the wand. Again, it's personal preference. I usually warn people away from a wand and more to something standard like this, just because I find these easier to use, and like I say, you don't burn yourself as much. But that brings us on to number 3. Number 3 is the one I use probably the most. This is what I have the most of in my kit. This is just a small selection. These are marcel tongs. They don't have a spring-loaded grip. What that means is I can use it as a wand if I wanted to. So if I just wanted a tiny bit of a wave through this part here, but didn't want to touch the ends, I could hold it like that, run it up and down, and that would just give me a little wave. Obviously these aren't plugged in, so you won't be able to see that. So what that would do is give me a little wave, but not touch the ends. But because it does have the glove on it, means that I can have a lot of pressure on it, or as much pressure as I need, meaning that I can straighten hair with it, getting a nice bend on it. If I wanted like a cutesy 50s style bob, then I'd be able to get that perfectly with this. I can tong set it, which means it's tight enough that I can get as curly as or as tight as I need it to be. Or I can do it looser where I don't hold it as much and I can just get it straight to the ends. If you're a hairdresser and you're looking at going into editorial or session, these are an absolute must. They are a super investment. These tongs are 120 quid a piece, and other manufacturers that make it are about that. So first of all, you can buy one. So it's very hard to say, go out and buy the whole set. Pick the tong that you use the most in your editorial, your shoots, or your look, your style, and then build on it as you need them. That's what I'd recommend, that's what I did. So now on that, let's talk about barrel shape and size. This is what astounded me the most when I was looking around. The barrel, different shapes from thicker to thin, from thin to thick, or like a bobbly ones, or there was a multitude of different styles. I thought it was a little bit gimmicky, to be honest. I think a nice straight barrel like this will give you a much more variation throughout it. You can coil the hair very tightly around it if you want a more tight, solid feel, or you could just pop it around it once if you want a loose feel. It also means you don't get tied up. If you have one that has bobbles on it, or if it gets stuck in here, then you could end up burning yourself or your hair, and that's not what we want. Maybe it's just me being old-fashioned, but I say the standard way, straight barrel, is always going to be better. It's just going to suit the most amount of hair. If you're a hairdresser, it's going to be the best for your clients and the variation of hair types that you're going to see, from the very tightest of tight coil afro texture to the straightest of straight, never get a bend in it at all. A straight barrel is always going to be able to get that variation between the two and get a nice curl in whichever one you need. It's also going to be the easiest to use. As for size is very dependent on your hair type and texture. So if you want, obviously the curlier you want it, the smaller the tong should be. However, there are a few exceptions to that rule. Smaller tongs, such as size 16 and under, are notoriously difficult to use. The hair is going around it so many more times than a standard one. It means that it's easy to get tied up over yourself. So they're very difficult to use. They can give you a great effect. And if you're an editorial stylist, they're totally invaluable because they give you they're great for tong setting and then brushing out to get a huge volumized shape. But for clients, I think probably don't go under 16 unless you've got very short hair or it's a definitive look that you want. Standard size for consumers range from about 16 to about 32, 35. What the numbers refer to is the millimeter of the barrel. So if you're in America watching this, I don't actually know whether yours will still be in millimeters, because obviously you use imperial system. But for the rest of us, these are 25. It's 2.5 centimeters across. Job done. This is the size I have the most of. I have 2 or 3 pairs of these just in case they break on a shoot. Then I'm not being like, oh, I need another one. Better to have and not need than need and not have. Little life lesson. So these are great for hair from my length and down to get a nice wavy texture throughout, and even a curly texture. If you have hair that doesn't hold properly, you'll need something smaller than what you think, because you're gonna have to get a little bit more of a curl in there and let it drop. If you do your hair to the perfect wave and size, by the time you leave the house, the wind, the rain, what have you, it's gonna drop straight away. So it's better to go a little bit tighter if you're doing your own hair, or if you know that it has to last all night, than you would normally think so. So at the tongs that I've got here, mine top out at 31, which is again, 31 millimeters. This gives me a big wave, great for that kind of Hollywood glossy, brush it out, gives you a nice shine throughout it, really, really pretty. But again, I would only use these if I was a client, if I knew my hair could hold it. If I did a tong set on somebody and I knew that their hair couldn't hold it, it's gonna drop out much, much faster than the 25s would, for example. So my personal recommendation would be to stick with around 22 to 28 millimeter size tongs. What that's gonna give you is a great finish on most hair types that won't drop out too quick. If you're a hairdresser, especially if you're looking to get into editorial or session work, you're gonna need a big selection of them, probably something down from 13 or even a pencil size, right up to 38. You'd use something like a 38 just to get a bit of body around the crown, but not much of a wave. again, if that's something that you like as a look as a client, super easy to do. You can pop a little bit of a wave just around here. If you fancy a little bit of volume around the crown, 38s, couple of them. You don't like the wave, you don't like the texture, let that cool down, brush that out. Fantastic. Gives you a nice bit of body through here, a lot easier than getting the brush and the hairdryer together. So for clients, they're a great and valuable tool. I'm going to do a whole video on how to use curling tongs, what angles are the best to use them at. You'll see then a lot more the visual representation about what size is best for you. You'll see the curls that I'll be able to create with them. But just for the moment, if I had to choose anything, I would choose one with a glove, and I would choose a size 22 to 28 if you're a client. A medium-sized one probably, that a lot of brands will call it. I know brands like GHD, they have a couple of 2 or 3 sizes. Their medium one is probably best for most people. I think that's about 25, 26, if I'm not mistaken, which will give you a great curl. You can use it for body. If you just want to obviously take a neater section, I can't see myself. If you wanted it for body, you could just pop it in around the root. That's just going to give you a tiny bit of body, let that cool, and then bring it down. With a 25, you can do that dead easily. It will also be able to give you a great curl, or as I was saying before, you can use it like a wand if you just want a little bit of a wave through the midsection, but straighter ends, which gives you that cool kind of undone, done look that you see a lot on the catwalk, a really cool undone kind of texture. So yeah, stay tuned for a video on how to use curling tongs. I just wanted to make this video because, like I say, I was astounded and I don't think there's much guidance for people on what hair tongs to use. So knowing your hair type, as we've watched before in the videos, knowing what kind of look you're going for, and finally your budget you want to spend. These go from anything to about 20 quid to 100 and something. Things to look for is that they have a ceramic barrel, although that's not that important. I have some with metal barrels. The spring works properly and it doesn't look like it's going to give out really quickly. That the screws and the glove itself is quite tight and flush, because if it gets caught in that, which it probably will do, most of them aren't like perfectly machined, but if it gets caught on that, then it can be a bit of a nightmare. Take your time, turn off the tong, roll it out. Do not just pull, because if you pull, you can tighten the knot a lot more. It's a mistake you'll only make once, but it is a terrifying mistake, because your natural reaction is to go, oh my God, it's stuck. And that can actually do a lot more. That can tighten it a lot more, that can do a lot more damage than what you'd need it to. Another thing that I'd look for, most of them do, is that the tong moves freely away from the wire. What that means is it's not going to get all twisted up around your hand. And lastly, that the wire is long enough. These are tiny, these are non-professional. So this is almost useless because I need to do a full head, which means that I only have, not even 2 meters distance, if I take that into account, which means it's going to be a lot harder for me to work around somebody's head, work around somebody's hair, or work from a distance if I just need to run up and touch something up offset. So look for the longest cord you can do. And that's it. The key points are, we need to look at our hair type. Don't necessarily think that because you want a big wave, you need the biggest tong, because it might drop out really quickly. Don't go too small with your tongs. Don't go anything less than a 16 if you're a client, unless you have very short hair, because you're going to get tangled up. It's going to be very difficult to use. Personally, I would always get something with a glove. It means you can open it up and use it as a wand if you want to, or you can close it to seal off those ends and make sure your hands are away, which means that you won't burn yourself as much. And 4, I'm going to make it a bit clearer when we're talking about how to use curling tongs, but always, even if you're a hairdresser, it doesn't matter, practice when they're off. Practice how tight, because you want to see how tight the coil is, how much hair you can get in. It's a whole technique that you have to learn. And practicing when it's off means that you're not going to damage that hair, damage that client's hair, damage your doll's head's hair. It's going to be a lot better and safer for everybody just to keep practicing when they're off. So what I did, practice for days and days and days when it was off, and then kept practicing for a long time afterwards. Which is another point, when it comes to practicing, you won't get it the first time, I can assure you. First time you tong your hair, it probably won't look good. Maybe you'll get beginner's luck, but probably not for a long time. It takes a bit of practice to be able to get your hair to get that wave in properly. So don't just go, oh, they're rubbish, I'll put them to the back of the cupboard and never see them again. Use them often, practice with them often, and soon you'll be able to get a great shape that you look for. I don't know anybody that's been able to pick up a set of tongs and go, bang, tong set, lovely, job done, I'm amazing. Never seen it, and I've seen the greatest of hairdressers. Everybody will tell you the same thing. It is practice, practice, practice. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to watch a video on how to get beachy, wavy hair through sea salt spray, not through curling tongs, click up here. And if you want to learn about what hair type you have, which is going to help you when it comes to choosing your curling tongs, click down here. And please, please, please click the logo to subscribe. Thumbs up to like, that's a great help. Take care, I'll see you soon.